tell the court the guy who wrote the dossier was, quote, desperate to stop Trump. The dossier they're using to get a warrant to further spy on the Trump campaign. Didn't tell the court the guy who wrote the dossier was working for the Clinton campaign.
Well, we heard about the truth about the Steele dossier this week when the Inspector General told us it was all garbage, rubbish, all made up.
He didn't tell them that. Donald Trump's Republican defenders' tactic of screaming out debunked conspiracy theories on the Steele dossier did nothing to prevent his impeachment. But they do give us the opportunity to dive back into one of the most intriguing elements of the Trump-Russia scandal, the emergence of the Steele dossier. And joining me now are two of the experts on said dossier, Glenn Simpson and Peter Fritsch. They are the founders of Fusion GPS and the authors of the new book, Crime in Progress. Gentlemen, thank you very much. And at the risk of disturbing your ears even further, now let me play you one other person screaming about the dossier, and that would be Donald Trump. And this was him at a campaign rally in Pennsylvania recently. Take a listen.
The Inspector General's shocking report proved that the Obama FBI obtained secret warrants to spy on my campaign based on a phony foreign dossier of debunked smears paid for by crooked Hillary Clinton and the DNC. The FBI failed to disclose the nature of the political hit job to the FISA court. They hid it, they deceived it, and they lied.
Okay, well, none of that is true. But Glenn, I'll start with you first. I don't even know where to begin, but you go ahead and begin. What was the original origin of Christopher Steele's research on Donald Trump, and who paid for it?
The origin of the research into Donald Trump started in September of 2015, and it was financed by the Republicans. The first half of our investigation was all paid for by the Republicans. The reason that we hired Christopher Steele was that we did about 8 months of research for the Republicans, which led us ultimately to become very curious about Donald Trump's connections to the Russians.
Yeah, and in fact, the idea that, Steele, Peter, I'll give this one to you. The idea that this guy, Christopher Steele, who was hired, was this anti-Trump, horrible person who hated Donald Trump and went out to try to smear and make up lies about him, the opposite appears to be true. This is a quote from the Inspector General's report, which, by the way, for the audience, found the opposite of what all these Republicans are saying, that the Steele dossier was not the source of the investigation. It simply was not. But it quotes, Steele called the allegation that he was biased against Trump from the start ridiculous. He stated that, if anything, he was favorably disposed toward the Trump family before he began his research, because he had visited a Trump family member at Trump Tower and had been friendly with the family member for some years. He described their relationship as personal and said that he once gifted a family tartan, a tartan from Scotland to the family member. Peter, can you tell us, do you know who that family member is? There's been a lot of speculation about who that is, because it sounds like both the person who originally funded the Steele research and Steele himself were basically pro-Trump. Or pro-Republican, at least.
Yeah, I think we all think it's Ivanka Trump, and I think it's more an acquaintanceship than a friendship. Chris is a super polite British person who, when contacted, reciprocates and often will. I mean, if you wrote him today, Joy, you'd get a Christmas card in the next week. It's important to remember, though, that Chris, when he was hired by us, we were working for Donald Trump, which is a super germane fact that people elide.
Mm-hmm. Working against Donald Trump. I mean, we didn't tell him who our client was.
Yeah. Right. So he didn't know who the ultimate client was.
No, we didn't tell him. I mean, it became obvious eventually. But no, it's a part of tradecraft that you wouldn't tell someone who is a subcontractor who the client is. You don't want to influence their thinking, but. Yeah. I was just talking to Chris about this the other day, and I think he mentioned the fact that he was friendly with Ivanka the very first time we met.
Yeah.
And, he certainly had no animus against him. I mean, what we've said previously in testimony and other places is that, to the extent that there was a opinion that was formed about Donald Trump's fitness to be president of the United States, it was formed during the course of the research.
Yeah.
And the reason that Chris was so concerned about Donald Trump becoming president was because of what we were finding about him, which was really scary.
And that is what I want to get to now. There's a Washington Post piece that sort of compares what the Mueller report found and what Steele found. And I'll just read a little bit of it. The Mueller report substantiates the core reporting and many of the specifics in Steele's 2016 memoranda, including that Trump campaign figures were secretly meeting with Kremlin figures, that Russia was conducting a covert operation to elect Donald Trump, and that the aim of the Russian operation was to sow discord and disunity in the U.S. and within the transatlantic alliance. Peter, go through a little bit more of what Mr. Steele actually found.
I mean, first of all, mission accomplished, right? I mean, that's exactly what they managed to do, the Russians. You know, Chris's inquiry was really broad-based. In the beginning, we talk about this kind of extensively early on in our book. You know, he was meant to figure out why it is he kept going to Russia without actually consummating any deals. And what he found was a systematic, what he believed his sources said was a systematic program to work with the Trump Organization campaign to get him elected. Of course, you know, that finding was about 8 months ahead of the intelligence community's finding. So, you know, there are details that get quibbled about in the dossier, but the underlying sort of gestalt of the thing has been more than borne out.
Yeah, and Glenn, you know, go on.
I was just going to say, I mean, the clips that you played are truly amazing. I mean, the most amazing thing about those clips is that, you know, they sink in with people if you lie enough times.
Yeah.
You know, as Adolf Hitler proved,
yeah.
You know, some people start to believe these lies.
Well, believe it. I want to talk about one of the things that is the sort of the detail in the Steele dossier that keeps coming up, and that is this idea that there are tapes that Russia may have of Donald Trump that they could use as compromise against him. There's an intriguing footnote in the Mueller report about tapes that they don't describe. Were you all ever able to, or was he able to substantiate the existence of any kind of tapes of Trump that Russia could use against him?
Well, so, you know, that was news to us and to Chris, that footnote that you're alluding to. What we know definitively is that Donald Trump lied about, you know, his presence in Moscow in that hotel. His body man or bodyguard, Keith Schiller, did in fact later testify to being offered prostitutes that evening. So, you know, there's a lot of, as we also write in the book, there's no fewer than about 7 sources that we know of who substantiated that claim. So Chris and his colleagues had quite a robust discussion about whether to include it. He, as a former intelligence professional, decided that, you know, if there was existing compromise that could be used as leverage against...
But I mean, honestly, there's a kind of a who cares aspect of this, which is, you know, that's not really the core of what Chris's reporting was. The core of Chris's reporting was that the Kremlin was conspiring to elect Donald Trump president of the United States, and Donald Trump was, you know, supportive of that and going along with it, and, you know, was involved in all kinds of things with the Russians, including business deals, which now we now know to be true. So, you know, the whole P-tape issue is a bit of a distraction from the real core concerns that we raised, that Chris raised.
Well, you know, it's not a distraction to Republicans. They seem to be obsessed with it. This is the book. We are out of time, but this is the book. It is called Crime in Progress, and everyone can check it out on their own and dig into more about what Christopher Steele was able to find. Glenn Simpson and Peter Fritsch, thank